Why did I have to get mixed up with that bitch?
Because she got a great podcast and you got your head all the way up in it. Heat's coming up next.
Haven't Seen It with Tim Sestito and Tommy Tevene. Hello, everybody. Welcome on in. Thank you all so much for listening today. This is a podcast where one of us is watching a movie for the very first time, and today that is Tommy. And during our theme song there, I just stared at Tommy because he just told me, he was like, I got the opening figured out. And I was like, because I know it's some dumb podcast pun.
Yeah.
Uh, and I don't know whether to be impressed or the most agitated human alive. And I'm a little,
How's my Pacino? Is my Pacino good enough for you?
it was better than I could have ever thought it would be, if we're going to be completely true. Was it good? No, but was it better
Yeah.
than I thought it was going to be? Yeah,
Yeah.
probably.
You gotta go.
Um,
You go high up on the ass podcast part.
so Heat, Tommy, would you like to explain your relationship to the movie Heat along with myself? Because I think there's a little bit of a story there.
Yeah. So as we do in our friend's basement, we did movie night there, and we picked Heat, and we're all like, "Fuck yeah!" I've never seen Heat before. It was probably what, like 2 or 3 years ago at this point.
Something like that.
Something like that. And anyways, we're in the basement, and we put them on the movie around like 10 o'clock at night. It's a long ass fucking movie, in my defense. Good movie, but it's 10 o'clock at night, and you put on a 3 hour movie. I fucking passed out. And there's one scene during this movie, during the shootout, the climactic shootout,
Yeah,
where
there's a major climax in this movie when you
yeah,
have surround sound audio on, and when you're like snoring over like AR-15 rifle shots that are like piercing.
yeah,
Because I mean, one of the things in this movie, the sound design is just incredible.
mhm,
And it's just a movie of rising and falling tension. Like
mhm,
that tension just exists throughout the whole movie, even within that first like 15 minutes of, especially when it's your first watch and you're like, I'm not sure exactly who these characters are.
mhm.
Um, but we will talk about it more. I think we'll have a shortened version of movies you saw recently. One I would like to discuss is one that is the polar opposite of a movie like Heat. It is called Paddington. It is a
Okay.
2014 film, family film. Have you ever seen any of the Paddingtons?
Mm-mm.
It
Have-
was delightfully charming in the best way. I really enjoyed it. It's on Netflix. If you haven't seen any of the Paddington movies, I watched it with my family.
Feels like a family
Really,
movie. Yeah,
it's a
good one.
well, it's a great family movie, but it's
Yeah.
just there's something about that movie that just like endears you to Paddington.
Mm.
Um, and I think the movie has a lot of heart, and I think there's not a ton of movies that come out with a lot of heart and a lot of soul in them, and I thought that was one of them, and I can't wait to check out Paddington 2. So
Yeah.
Paddington, go watch it. I know that was the joke in the Nicolas Cage movie, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent,
Mm.
but good movie. Go check it out.
You're all about the bear. Do you see that Twitter account that photoshops Paddington into different things every day until he forgets?
Yeah, I think I saw that.
You don't religiously like the tweets that guy do for that.
No, no, I don't run the social media account, Tommy. That's your job.
Yeah.
Tommy, what about you? What are some movies you saw
All
recently?
right. So I actually ended up seeing The Beekeeper, a movie I did tell you about. And boy, The Beekeeper is just beatastic. Jason Statham. It is just like such a schlocky, shitty fucking movie, but hilarious at the same time. Where I got nice and tuned up with my friend, had a few drinks before we went to go see it. And it's exactly the mindset you have to go into this movie where like there's one scene that opens up with a character reading a book about bees saying like, bees are actually kind of interesting. It's the type of movie where Jason Statham, in order to kill someone, takes a jar of honey and throws it at them and it fucking breaks their fucking skull that way. This is the type of movie we went into. This is what I was expecting. I fucking loved
Would
every
you
minute of it.
would you call it a B movie?
Oh yeah, it was the best B movie ever.
Well, I didn't mean like B movie like Jerry Seinfeld's B movie. I meant like the letter B movie.
Yeah, oh, it totally is. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, it's a very schlocky movie. I think it knows what's going for. The plot is nonsensical, but just anytime that Jason Statham did a bee pun, I was fucking dying laughing. So it's one of those like almost intentionally so bad it's good type movies. It just knows the exact tone it's supposed to go for,
Where
which is just stupid fucking fun action.
if we were going to compare it to Cats, where
Cat
does
cats cats is a lot better in
okay,
terms of that aspect.
in
In
terms of
terms
that
of
aspect?
in terms of the so bad it's good aspect. But this movie has moments for it and is exactly what I was looking for, where it's just like the opening montage just has different photos of bees. And I was laughing so fucking hard at this ridiculous movie. The tears were coming down my face from it. So if you want to see a movie you can fucking just laugh at, go see The Beekeeper.
That is a plus worthy. When we are, how it's kind of like, oh, we're back, especially after 2023. I felt like there was a lot of like I felt like it was a good movie year for the first time in a while, like where it's just been stale for 5 or 6 years or so, and seeing the way the trends are changing and getting like a Jason Statham like B movie called The Beekeeper that's so bad it's good
Yeah.
is like a sign like we're back, we're nature's healing, like we're getting the crap, like movie studios are realizing that throwing $700 million at different projects is not like a sustainable business model, and giving somebody like 20 million to make a little dumb action movie that can make its budget and marketing back, good idea. Um so so for a going to the polar opposite of that, uh this is Heat.
He's here. I can feel it.
Now,
Assume they got our phones, assume they got our houses, assume they got us.
feel the heat. Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, Val Kilmer.
This crew is good.
Heat, rated R. Now playing at a theater near you.
Yeah, so Heat is an interesting movie because it came to my attention like 5 or 6 years ago. Because I was two when the movie Heat came out.
Yeah, as one.
I think in the pantheon of crime movies, because if you don't know about the plot of Heat, it's an American crime film. It follows the conflict between an LAPD detective, played by Pacino, and career criminal, played by De Niro, while also depicting its effects on their professional relationships and personal lives. Um, when you think about like the true epic crime movies, like The Godfather, Goodfellas comes up. I feel like for a while there, like in the 2000, like 20, early 2010s, like Heat kind of disappeared. Like it wasn't this readily available film and wasn't kind of discussed in this like in the pantheon of film that like some of these
I
other Heat, like these other bigger crime movies were kind of put into that respect. You know what I mean?
I think that I disagree with you slightly on the timeline. I think when this movie first came out in the 90s and stuff like that, it wasn't really discussed like heavily up there with like like you just said, Goodfellas, Godfather, all those. And it wasn't until the 90s, like late 90s and like early 2000s that TNT and networks like that would just show this movie over and over and over again. It became the type of thing that people would say, like, oh, like, the fucking the diner scene's coming up. I gotta go watch this one part. It's a movie that I feel like you could easily just drop in and out of so much. And it makes sense why this movie was originally developed as like a TV show.
Yeah. And you can definitely see the identity of that. I think with the through line of Natalie Portman, Al Pacino's stepdaughter, Lieutenant Vincent Hanna, there, where she's like in the movie for like 2 minutes, and like I think my first, because this is my third time watching Heat. I think my first time watching it, I was a little bit more confused, but now, like watching it and having seen everything, I don't think it's like I could see somebody on their first watch through thinking the movie's a little bit messy.
Mm.
It didn't feel that way to me though this time at all. Everything felt connected. I think the only reason it could feel a little bit messy because it's a movie you have to be paying attention to the whole time
Oh yeah.
it's a movie with a lot of names. It's a big ensemble cast, who we'll dive into deeper, and a lot of moving pieces with relationships with the police and criminals and where they're trying to go. And if you're not really paying attention to each step, um, it's easy to get lost a little bit in terms of like, oh, who's this guy and how is this getting connected and how did they find out? How did they start putting a trail on Neil and all
Hmm.
of that? And I think it all kind of it's all pretty clear. Like I was very impressed with how clear everything is. I think the two pieces is the Waingro being a serial killer, like that side, like there
Very
was no,
tangential. Yeah.
that was very much like a, that was clearly for the fuller script and they just kept one scene in. And the Natalie Portman daughter thing, and like that felt, but like they all felt like they served a purpose in terms of like developing the world and developing like who these characters are.
Yeah,
uh
to an extent, I think those scenes are very much just like, mood setting and just like setting like world building and stuff like that. But I mean, if you were to say like, hey, Michael Mann, can you cut this down a little bit? Those probably would be the scenes that would be cut first if you had to pick one.
yeah, the Natalie Portman through line. I mean, I think the Waingro prostitute
That's
killing
more
scene,
essential.
that one is cut pretty easily. I
Hmm.
think the Natalie Portman one is, it's more of like a character examination because throughout the movie we see Hannah's relationship with his third wife deteriorate because he's committed to his profession. That's where he all his mind lives, where all his time is, and he just doesn't prioritize his relationships. He has that great baby. I told you when you hooked up with me, you share me with all the creeps out on the street, right? Like he
Hmm.
has those lines. We watch
Married
that
to
too,
a job.
and now it's kind of referenced that Natalie Portman's daughter's or Natalie Portman is going through a rough time. The daughter Natalie, and she attempts to take her own life in his bathtub after the mom and after Hannah and his wife separate. And he's sitting there in the hospital comforting his soon to be ex-wife. And then he gets the page that Neil showed up to kill Waingro at the hotel. The last thing he had to do before he clears town for good. And it showed like who the character truly is. Like he even tried to stay there in that moment, but his wife's like, go, you got to go. Like your mind's not here, and it was more for like her subplot line was more for the character Hannah than anything else.
It was character building. I mean, both the scenes that we were just talking about, even the Vince and Hannah like showed up on the scene of the dead prostitute. That also just character building, just saying like this is just a typical day in the life of his job. He has to deal with shit like this because like he says like the one part where he's like, oh, like what's my life like? Fucking like dead babies in a microwave, and that's a tell instead of a show. But we need one scene to show, other than just fucked up bank robberies. Here's what this guy's dealing with on a daily messed up basis.
Yeah, you need that for that, and I think they do that exploratory too, because on the other side of it, you have Robert De Niro playing Neil McCauley. He's a professional thief, professional criminal. He is good at his job, and it is shown in the first 15 minutes. I love how tense it is and how quiet it is. It shows them all picking up the pieces, of what is needed for this robbery of a of a truck to get some bearer bonds. And the way it builds up, and it's one of those movies. I was watching Heat with a friend last night before for the recording, and we started it at like 8 o'clock, and he was like, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it through all 3 hours. After the first 15 minutes, he's like, yeah, I'm seeing this one in through the end because the tension of like everything, and you're like, ooh, what's going on here? And it's so
Yeah.
meticulously detailed, and having the truck that's going to run into the other truck, and the hospital van that's going to pause the Brinks truck there and gets run over, and that's where we're introduced to Waingro and kind of the instant that sets the plot in motion and gets Hannah on Macaulay's trail.
Mhm.
Because
Well,
I,
from the start, how do you feel about the sound mix in this movie overall?
I thought the
because
sound design was fantastic. I thought the mix was pretty good too. I didn't really
yeah,
have any problems with it. I had
there's
I had subtitles on, so that might have helped.
I'm assuming you watch this on like Netflix or something.
Yeah, I have the
Yeah,
Blu-ray, but I think it's at my parents' house. It's not here.
yeah. So I rented the Blu-ray for my first watch of this, and I don't know if it's something with my TV or if it was something with the Blu-ray or something like that. But there's something with the sound mix. While the sound design was obviously amazing, the gunshots like never fucking hear a fucking movie.
The
Yeah,
helicopter.
The helicopter. I mean, like when I went watching this, and I watched some like shitty B movie Punisher movie that came out in 2008, and the sound design of guns between like an actual great auteur compared to like whoever shitty Marvel movie. You're just like this is how action movies should sound all the time. But the problem I had with the Blu-ray, it was kind of typical of like your typical like action movie problem, kind of where the dialogue felt very low at points. I don't know if this is a problem with the Blu-ray or a problem with my TV, but it went from like I always had to turn up the volume way, 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 way up for the fucking dialogue scenes. The second a gunshot was fired, I was like, I have to turn this way the fuck down like,
Yeah.
immediately.
I mean, I was using my sound bar for the movie.
Same.
I didn't have any. It got a little bit loud during the gunshots,
Mhm.
but it didn't feel like I didn't have a problem with hearing any of the audio. So maybe the Netflix
Yeah.
mix. I think there's like a couple releases of the Heat Blu-ray. And I wonder if like if you had like the first release of Heat on Blu-ray and like if that one had mixing issues.
Yeah,
Um,
it might be a thing. I mean, I just changed my TV settings to dialogue clarity high up just to fucking hear it. But it's one of those things like I would love to see this movie in a theater. This would be definitely
yeah.
like a bucket
Oh,
list theater movie because
yeah.
just imagining like hearing the gunshots in the loudest fucking environment possible would just be fucking mind. It'd be mind blowing. It'd be great.
Yeah, and I mean I to say I have not looked to see if this has been playing in theaters. I think we might have to wait one more year. This is the film's 29th year of existence, came out in 1995. So I imagine, and they're starting production on Heat 2. So I imagine like a re-release of Heat would be, an easy
So,
million or two to clear right there.
so what's your temperature right now in Heat 2? Are you excited? Or are you just like, eh?
Wait and see. I mean, I
Yeah.
feel like Mann might be past his prime.
And you're the one that
But
saw Ferrari out of the two of us. I haven't.
yeah, no, I saw Ferrari. Like he's still a good filmmaker, but I don't. I mean, it's not going to touch Heat One. And
Hmm.
I think part of that is like you have a really iconic. This
Hmm.
movie is like a movie of scenes. I know this is like for the rewatchables, which is arguably the biggest movie podcast. This is like their pantheon.
They've
Like
covered like three times
they've
now.
covered it like yeah, they've done like reheat and a three heat on Heat because it's such a rewatchable movie. And in part of that is the, as you alluded to, it being on TNT, playing all the time, and you're able to get like there's just so many great scenes in this. Um, I think most of them probably come from Vincent Hanna. Like he is just an entertaining factor. I know that Pacino played him like he was a cop that was doing a lot of cocaine, even though that's
It
never,
shows.
it shows it was never,
You
brought
you almost
in.
feel you almost feel like Pacino himself, like in between takes, Michael Mann's like, "All right, here, just do another bump right now."
Yeah, you feel
You
that
feel that
man,
energy.
you feel that manic energy, like when he goes to his contact um at the scrapyard and he's like, why are you trying to waste my motherfucking time? And it's all these
It's
just like great tense scenes in terms of trying to find out this information. Like,
it's
you
kind
know,
of funny though thinking of Al Pacino though. Like, when did his descent really start? Of like him like going off the rails? Because this is I feel like him slightly showing the cracks of him almost becoming over the top parody. He toes the line very well in this movie, but like I feel like after this, he just breaks where he just becomes like, oh, people love me in Heat, then I can do this. I feel like Send the Woman maybe it was the start of this because when we watch like Godfather 1 and 2, he's not allowed.
he's so
He's so
reserved.
reserved. Yeah,
He's
yeah.
so reserved. And I mean, it
And
shows his range as an actor there too. I think it's just like the change in film that kind of hits in the 2000s, and kind of wanting more like franchises and out there characters. And he's just kind of coming to that age of leaving leading man territory. Him and De Niro are kind of, this is in terms of like their peaks of their career, this is like the last like true peak I feel like that they had in their like A-list territory. Would you agree with that?
I'd say probably for Pacino, I think that De Niro still had some good ones in him. It's kind of crazy looking back on like Pacino, like he had so much rise and falls. I mean, 70s were incredible for him. Dog Day Afternoon, Serpico, fucking Godfather movies. And then he goes into the 80s and he does Cruising, which I think is now received well.
Scarface, which
It's
is
in
arguably
Scarface,
his
but
most iconic performance.
yeah, but other than those two, like he barely works. I mean, he does. I'm gonna rattle off like four movies. I'm gonna ask if you've heard of any of these before. Author, Revolution, Sea of Love, and that's it. And for the 80s for him. Have you heard of any of those movies?
Was That's It a movie title, or is
No, no,
That's
no.
It in
That's
terms of
his.
That's It? Because That's It sounded
Yeah,
like a movie title. You could be making these up and I wouldn't
yeah.
know.
So
Um,
it's crazy. I mean, like he obviously got The Godfather 3. He gets Glengarry Glen Ross, and Son of a Woman is where he wins his Oscar, and where he's people will allow me to get away with this. And he's coming in. Whereas De Niro, I mean, he out throughout the 80s had Midnight Run. He had like the what's it called? King of Comedy. He had all these fucking great iconic movies in the
well, he had
80s.
his
And
partnership with Scorsese, which is always going to help. I believe Raging Bull was also 80, or is that 79?
yeah, that's 80. And then he had the Untouchables, Brazil, just a bunch of movies that people are still talking about, even Once Upon a Time in America. So it is kind of crazy the contrasting the elements. And De Niro, I didn't realize this. Casino came out only 3 weeks before this movie. So
Talk about
yeah.
heat check on after heat check.
Yeah,
Uh,
seriously.
in terms of those, like in terms of crime movies there. Yeah, and to kind of go back to what I was saying in the beginning, it all starts off because this is supposed to be a standard hit, get the bearer bonds and leave.
Mhm.
Then we're gonna fence them. They bring Waingro as the final guy for this heist. They hire him, they don't know him, and he's a loose cannon and he shoots one of the guards, and once you kill one witness, what's killing the other two? Because it went from a robbery to a homicide, and that's when Hannah gets brought in when it gets into the major crime unit, and that's what kind of starts this cat and mouse chase of Hannah versus Neil Colley. I love when they're trying to do the plutonium heist in there when they have the whole thing set up, and one of the guards in the truck just decides to sit down, and Neil hears it, wraps up the whole thing because
Messes up.
they're not going to bust them for a B&E. Like what is that, 6 months, like we're going to do that. And that scene is so tense, like you're just sitting there like, oh, okay, oh, he, like, they have them dead to rights in this moment and they do not know it. And how
I
the
think
hell are
it's
they
what
going to
good
get away
is.
from this?
Michael Mann's just so good, just like utilizing the quietness. So when we get to the latter scenes, it really just pops even more. It's just like
Yes.
it's like almost like a little cooking popcorn over the stove. You're just waiting for it to pop over and over and over again. It's just the pressure
Yeah,
cooker.
it's a great pressure cooker movie, how that tension rises and falls, and I think it's assisted by the score as well. That like synth, it's like almost post 80s synth in there, like it's very 90s feeling. It truly like has an LA feel to it as well, like just like great driving music almost, and it, like, I feel like that's when the score like hits the hardest.
Yeah,
Like when
even
the helicopter chase over Neil, like that's the sound as Hannah goes to the ground, then drives up, pulls him up and asks him for a cup of coffee and brings them to the diner scene, which is the first time we have De Niro and Pacino, together in a scene in a movie together.
and it makes so much sense why this is obviously the marketing of the movie was just like two legends finally coming up together. Because it's insane. We should have had an earlier project between the two of them. And it's wild that, I mean, Godfather 2, they're in the same movie, but obviously they didn't share any scenes. We should have had like a bunch of string of hits, but I mean, at this point, that diner scene, I know it's coming. It was like one of those things I knew going in. Still hit really well. It was incredible.
Yeah, it hits really well because it gives you a full understanding of who these characters are,
Mm,
and that they're probably more similar than they are different.
mm,
I wouldn't call any of these characters like good people. Like Hannah is more of a good guy, if you will, but he's obsessive to the point of ruining his relationships, and his whole personal life. Like he just kind of exists in this world,
mm,
um, and kind of, and definitely a cop that works outside of the rules, like kind of following in line with Training Day and Alonzo.
mm.
Um, you know, Probably a little more lawful than Alonzo is, but he's willing to work with lower level criminals to get for information. Like let them continue their operations, but you got to give me the information that I need there.
Mm. The whole diner scene is just like a spin on like the classic that we see in so many movies like now. I mean, The Dark Knight is essentially a remake of Heat of Batman and the whole like we're not so different,
Yeah,
you and I
you
type
see
thing.
the so like I think you see that in the beginning of I wanted to bring that up. The beginning of the Dark Knight with the bank robbery scene, you could see Heat's influence all over the place. I feel like
I mean,
even in the cinematography,
even the case
even
of William Fichtner being in the
yeah,
bank manager at the
that was
beginning.
where I was gonna go because William
Yeah,
Fichtner's in both of these movies.
yeah.
It almost felt like an intentional casting job by Nolan to put being like,
Oh,
okay,
100%.
if you know, you know. Because like when I saw The Dark Knight, I had no idea that.
Yeah, that was before either of us of you knew what Heat was on our radar. But I mean, going back to the diner scene, it's one of those things. LA Takedown was what the TV pilot of Heat was. It was a 90-minute film. Michael Mann directed it himself. He cut out a lot of the subplots, and he had Scott Plank playing the role of Hannah and Alex MacArthur playing the role of Neil McCauley, who I mean, never heard of either of those guys. And it's one of those things that I just watched this on YouTube before we recorded. They did the diner scene, and it's almost verbatim the same exact dialogue. And if you ever want to know how much an actor makes a difference, just watch that scene and then watch the De Niro and Pacino scene because it just shows just the two actors are just kind of wooden. It's not really as compelling, just whatever. And it's the same exact fucking script. And meanwhile, you obviously, I mean, of course, Pacino and De Niro are some of the greatest actors of all time, but just really shows so much more how much casting correctly and just like having all timers in your movie makes a difference.
Well, and let me ask you this: like, this is the first time we're seeing them share dialogue together.
Mm.
Do you think that the allure of, and I'm not discounting De Niro or Pacino because they both give terrific performances in this.
Mm.
Do you think that like there's an allure to just that moment in like film history, like that adds to that tension? You know what I mean? Because like you've seen both of it, like, but just the allure of being like, oh, this is the first time these two characters, and we've seen them now being playing cat and mouse with each other. They both know who each other are. Like I
Mm.
loved how Neil tricks tricks Hannah and the LAPD to get the scoop on who they are, where they go to this random refinery and start pointing around, and they have the LAPD trailing them, and then they go out there to try to think, what the hell were they looking at? And there's Neil all the way up taking pictures, learning
Yeah.
who Vincent Hanna is. And
I, I I do have to agree with you. I think it's the weight of just these two actors with these incredible legacies. I mean,
incredible
both
performances because you're hooked in the movie. It's like
it's it's one of those things like in our today's world and today's cinema. I mean, we don't really have movie stars for the most part, and the equivalent of this is just like stupid IP bullshit of like oh my god, Batman and Superman are meeting up in this scene.
and they couldn't even do
And,
that good.
yeah, they couldn't even do that well. But and instead, like Pacino and De Niro just have so much weight behind them. It's something that like I don't know what the equivalent of that would be in 2023, in 2024. I mean, Brad
Op,
Pitt
Op,
and
Oppenheimer and Barbie. I mean, you had it. Probably the
no,
closest thing
I
is
mean in
Once
terms
Upon a
of
Time
the
in
two,
Hollywood is
yeah, I
probably the
meant the two
closest thing.
actors.
Once
Yeah,
Upon a Time in Hollywood's probably the closest thing, but they were like they were so connected and like they worked together. It didn't have the same of it being this cat and mouse chase.
yeah. I mean, a huge even cast in 2024 world. I mean, like you I don't feel like there's.
Adam Driver. I think he's going to play young Neil in the Heat 2. But I'm not sure, and I'm not going to try to speculate on it. It feels
Yeah.
like a problem that Hollywood has that I'm hoping they're working to resolve. So I think another great performance to discuss here is Val Kilmer, because we haven't talked about his character Chris yet at all. Um, he's one of Neil Caffrey's henchmen here. Another robber. He's married to Ashley Judd. He's a degenerate gambler. That's why he does these robberies, and his marriage is falling apart, and he's in danger of losing his kid. How nice was it seeing Hank Azaria pop up?
Oh yeah, I knew he was in the movie beforehand, because I've seen the great ass scene before.
Yeah,
But still, it was awesome. It's him again, his little bit right there.
getting his little bit right there. He's having an affair with Ashley Judd's character,
Yeah.
and it's another just terrific performance. I feel like it's a very physical performance by Val Kilmer in this, because it's not, we've established the stakes that he's trying to keep his marriage together. He truly loves his wife, and he doesn't want to like leave town, because one of the morals of the story, one of the most famous lines in the movie is, you have to have nothing in your life that you can't drop 30 seconds once you feel that heat coming around the corner. Like that's kind of like
Well,
the moral of the story.
it is hilarious how extreme to the point that De Niro takes that, where like you go into De Niro's apartment and immediately it's just like, hey man, you could get some furniture. Like, I don't want to sleep on your floor right here. Come on, De Niro. It's just the two contrasting things. Kilmer's meant to show the humanizing side of like you can actually have a relationship here. And at the end of the day, he's the only person on Hannah's crew that gets out. I mean, not Hannah, De Niro's crew that gets out of it. That
Yeah.
becomes way unscrapped. So I have to ask you a question. Kilmer, I thought was great. It's a really quiet performance, not really like extremely loud. But this role almost went to Keanu Reeves. And do you think that would have been better or worse? Because I think that this is not a dialogue heavy performance, which makes me think that Keanu could have done a great job too.
Um, Keanu as John Wick, yes. Keanu in 1995, I don't know.
This is Rick coming off of Heat, to put it in perspective.
Coming off of what?
Coming off of Speed, sorry.
Yeah, I think it would be a hard shift for a 90s audience coming from Speed, where he plays the hero of all heroes.
Well, to be fair, Val Kilmer was Batman like a few months before this.
Yeah, but it's not one of the
it was one of the biggest highest grossing movies in 95. That was fresh in people's heads. You can't deny that.
Whatever. No,
Like,
I can't picture anybody but Val Kilmer in this role. It's just the physicality of him holding the weapons. I believe that there's at least a legendary story that the LAPD shows video clip of Val Kilmer reloading his assault weapon.
It's not even just as Marine recruits.
It's as training, being like, this is how effectively you want to do this. Like, this is how good this is, and they're showing Val Kilmer, like that. That's insane. Like, there's just that real physicality to the role.
The realness in general of this movie is insane, because like this is a movie that has been cited so often, where people will commit a robbery and they'll be like, yeah, I watched Heat and I thought like, oh, I could do that. There's like a famous LA one in like 98 where like, the two robbers died and they found Heat in the apartment, and it's like, oh, they must have been huge Heat fans. And you can see this movie doesn't have like a fantastical element. It's really grounded.
It's really grounded, and I think it's even from the beginning when Pacino first gets to their crime scene, that first crime scene from the first 15 minutes, and he goes, these guys are good. Like he's established, like, these guys are professionals. Like, these guys know what they're doing. They were out within 3 minutes because they know that's our response time to a 211 call. Like they had everything prepared to such a way that it's like it almost can't be replicated. And like I don't think there's ever, not that to my knowledge, ever been like a criminal syndicate that's as efficient as the one that's in Heat. It's probably like the most unrealistic part of the movie.
You say that, but this is based on a true story. I mean, like, granted, who knows how true. Well, it's apparently based on the story of Neil McCauley, who was tracked down by Detective Chuck Amundsen at 64, and he's like committed all these crimes, the man in the diner and everything like that. And Chuck Amundsen ended up working with Michael Mann, producing some shows like Crime Story, which is insane. But I mean, it's one of those things that like I feel like in this modern day era, we don't really have a huge crime syndicate thing. But the locations in this movie doesn't use a single soundstage, which is insane to think about. It's all shot on location. Apparently, Michael Mann told his location scout, "I want you to find places of LA that haven't been used before in film." And it's just wild to show how much of LA this opens up. Where it's just like, wait, what? Like there's
Yeah.
train tracks in LA? Like what? I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it really feels like you got a full tour of the city of Los Angeles, which is
Hmm.
very cool. And like all the seedy parts, right? Because if you go visit Los Angeles, you're gonna go to the highlights, you're gonna go to the nice
Hmm.
areas, you're gonna go to Beverly Hills, you're gonna go to Malibu, you name the Santa Monica Pier, like none of that's in this movie. Like it's all like where these people would live, where they're going to be. And I know the big one, the big scene, the climax of this film revolves around a bank heist. They're going to rob around 11 or 12 million dollars from a bank in broad daylight. And they have Danny Trejo's character called Gilbert Trejo, which is convenient because I don't think they've ever said the name Gilbert in the movie. They just say
Yeah,
Trejo.
it's called Trejo.
They just call him Trejo in the movie, uh, where he's like, "Damn, I have the heat around me. I can't come to the robbery." And then it turns out he flipped because uh, Waingro and Van Sant. So Van Sant's the guy they stole the bearer bonds from at the beginning of the movie, using Waingro to get back at Neil McCauley, and like the way it's all interconnected, that kind of revolves around this heist there, um, and bring it's so tense when they're walking in there with Tom Sizemore as Michael Cerrito. um, you really feel like their ruthlessness, and their savvy and their efficiency as well. And they basically almost get away, but the police show up right in time. And basically, a war breaks down in the middle of the streets in Los Angeles. It is some of the most intense gunfire you will ever see in a movie. And I think, like, from what I've heard, when they're filming it, because they're filming it on the streets in Los Angeles, the surrounding neighborhoods thought like there was a massive shooting going on
I'm
because the sound was so insane. They were not aware
sure.
that a Michael Mann movie was being shot.
Yeah, be freaking the fuck out. I mean, apparently Michael Mann, the way he got the sound was he just put like microphones right near the guns, like as the like bullets were getting fired to make it sound like that. And it is insane. I mean, I was complaining a little bit earlier about how I had to turn on the TV because of how loud the gunfire was, but it still was fucking awesome. And if I didn't care about my neighbors, I would have just been like full blast, fuck it, just blast it. It
Yeah,
sounded incredible. It is amazing.
yeah, and it's very impactful, and because I think this movie, one of the things it does is because you're given more of the perspective of the criminals than you are of the cops. Like you only follow Hannah, but you follow Macaulay, you follow Val Kilmer. You get a sense of who these guys are, and you're kind of pulling for them because of their efficiency, and they don't seem like too bad of guys, right?
Well, at the end of the movie, when Pacino's chasing out De Niro, who are you rooting for in that moment? It's tough. Yeah, yeah.
It's you're almost rooting for like the Seen and Inglorious Bastards with Shoshana and the private the
Yeah.
private sniper, where they both just shoot each other, and it just ends with them both falling over in this beautiful romance for each other.
It's almost just like watching like a collision course where it's just like, oh, do you guys really have to do this? Like, you just wish there could be a way of like De Niro gets away, but he doesn't like win totally or something like that. Or
Yeah. And I think
um,
the interesting thing is what winning is for De Niro, because he establishes a relationship with Edie, played by Amy Brenneman, who's
who
a
hated the movie. She hated
she
well, she hated the script at first. She's like, this movie's too violent. Like, I don't understand it. Like, why should you do this? And Michael Mann's like, that's why you're perfect for this role. It's a great little subversion right there.
Yeah, I can see that because that's the interesting thing. Like she kind of falls head over heels for Neil, and I think part of her character is bringing the stakes into like putting some kind of stakes for Neil because him just like getting away and going to New Zealand, like not really like stakes for the character.
Mhm.
And putting like something in the way that's going to question like this life code of you can't have anything in your life that you can't ditch 30 seconds flat. And him going out to dinner with like his crew and seeing them all have their wives and kids and being like, damn, like, I don't want to be alone my whole life.
Mhm.
There. And then the good conflict and twist of it is when she, he goes, okay, we have to go in 24 hours. And she's like, that stuff on the news, was that you? And like her running away there.
Well,
Um,
I do love just the moment of like where I've never seen this movie before, and thankfully I didn't get the editing spoiled to me. Where I see him looking out, and he knows that like the cops are right there. The heat is literally right on the corner. It's like you said throughout the whole movie, you have to be able to leave anything behind in your life in 30 seconds or less. And then he looks at her. She's looking at him, just like,
Come
"Are you
on.
coming back? Yeah, are you coming back?" I mean, like it's just insane. Like you figure that this guy has never had a girl really hit on him before, even though De Niro is looking fine as hell in this movie. He just has no emotional attachments whatsoever. He's just like done. And then it's the first time that someone gives and he hesitates for a moment. I feel like he doesn't immediately leave. It's
He does hesitate.
mm,
But I think, and I wonder if the selfless decision in his mind was, I leave her because because like there's cops everywhere. There's no way for us to get to escape this. Like she could get hurt or get arrested or seen as an accomplice. Versus if I just leave her there, like yeah, I devastate her emotionally, but she's there. I mean, I thought it was
mm.
interesting that she ultimately decides to go with him. That felt
She's like some meat craft designer. Like you wouldn't expect that at all. You think she's like,
yeah,
what?
it felt like I feel like not like you kind of have to ease your significant other into the fact that you're a criminal,
Yeah,
not like having her find out when the largest attempted bank robbery fails like instantly and is national news. Like I feel like that's a hard way to break the lady into what's going on in your
yeah.
life, like what you actually do for a living. Uh, I feel like that's
It's a
tricky.
tough conversation. Like, hey, you know how I was telling you, what did you lied to her? He was like, oh, he sells stuff.
So he sells metals.
Yeah. He's like, oh, actually, I'm a fucking bank robber. And some of those movies that, like lesser movies of this have like a similar character. And oftentimes it doesn't work. It just drags down the movie. And it's just like, oh, come, let's get past this scene. This whole entire part's awful. Yeah. And Heat, that's not the case.
No, and
It,
I think part of that is because once the heat is fully on, you would think he would be wise enough to just leave her. Like there's
Mhm.
no time to get her back. Like you feel the heat 30 seconds, so you're kind of like he's kind of breaking his code. But once he sees Hannah and he realizes the heat is right around the corner, like literally right there,
Yeah,
he
Sandra Bullock's
follows
right around the color.
yeah, and he makes that decision and goes around the corner. And I think it's those layers that makes all those moments of character development like truly pay off at the end of the movie. Like when Chris is trying to go back to get uh his wife Charlene, and she's working with the cops, and they're like, he's here.
Mm.
Um, and she goes out and kind of gives him that look, and it was like perfect from Ashley Judd, and just like the little
Yeah, the
like
little hand thing.
and you can just see in her face, like even though she's been having an affair with him, like realizing that like even with all this heat, all this pressure on him, he's still committed to her and to the family. Like just kind of seeing that break there, was just so powerful.
Mm.
And yeah, I think that like this movie is truly like a masterfully class movie, and we've covered good amount of crime movies on here. I think in terms of movies that are considered like the highest of the highs, The Godfathers, Casino, and Heat, I would say are them. Goodfellas we have not covered because we have not met somebody yet that has not seen Goodfellas that
We'll get there. We'll get there.
we'd want to have on the podcast. But
We've both seen that years before.
a lot of times. So Tommy, where does Heat compare to other first time crime movies for you?
I think this might be towards the top. I think that this is some ways a little more entertaining. This is more of like a popcorn thriller, whereas like Godfather and Casino are more drama epics, more focused on just like the drama aspect of
But
this.
this is an epic too. Like this, I wouldn't call this like your typical popcorn flick.
No, but I think that this has more elements of that in it. So this makes for a more entertaining watch. I feel like of the four movies, Godfather 1 and 2, Heat, and Casino, this is the one I'd go back to the most. I mean, obviously, this is like what we were talking about earlier. This is insane rewatchable, and I can already see it from the jump. I mean, I watched this movie on Saturday. I rented it with my buddies. We were had a couple drinks in us, and I managed to pass out again because it was 9 o'clock at night at that point.
God, Tom.
I just had a few drinks and whatever. I mean, it was late at night, so I threw this on a movie. Even though I watched the first hour beforehand, I was like, I'm just gonna start from the beginning again, and it was really good and rewarding to throw it back on from the beginning.
So you've seen the beginning of this movie like 3 times.
yeah, exactly. I've seen the first 30 minutes of Heat a lot, but all the way through, the first time.
Fair enough. That hits our very loose rule criteria that's made up by us specifically.
Yeah.
I am a star. I'm a star, I'm a star, I'm a star. I am a big, bright, shining star.
All right. So I feel like I'm just going to kind of run through some of the other characters. We haven't even mentioned John Voight, who plays Nate, who is Neil's fence. Diane Vernara's Justine Hanna, Vincent Hanna's wife. We haven't even talked about Tom Noonan, who's playing Kelso, Kevin Gage as Waingro, William Fichtner, we barely touched out as Van Zandt. We have Danny Trejo in this. Henry Rollins is in this. Jeremy Pivens has like a one scene mini heat check as a doctor before he had hair plugs. So it's always nice to remember that Jeremy Piven was bald at some point.
Yeah.
But this is a all-star A+ cast. And I feel like there's so many terrific performances in this. This is one of the harder ones where you have to go, who's the true star of this movie? Whose performance? And I think for the first time ever, I'm going to give it to both. I'm going to give it to Pacino and De Niro because they're yin and yang in this. You need the harmony of both of them for this movie to work well.
It's one of the things of just like De Niro, obviously the performances are very different. Pacino's going fucking balls out, like fucking just crazy, way too bonkers to a point that's almost over the top, but like just right there. And De Niro's given a quiet, reserved performance. And you can see it just in the diner scene of how they contrast each other. And just looking at De Niro's reactions to what Pacino says is just insane. I mean, like when Pacino says, like, I won't hesitate to kill you if it's between you or like what's the point, like making a cop
wife's a widow.
Yeah. And just you see De Niro just take that in for a moment, process it, and then he says, like, well, the inverse is I'll do the fucking same to you. And just that little quiet moment of like 5 to 10 seconds right there, or how much it was, is I think one of the best performances I've seen in terms of just quiet understanding, listening I've seen in the movie in a while.
Yeah, and this is a star power movie, and kind of why I want to give it to both of them, because I think it's there's an allure to this, because like you try to pitch this movie to somebody, hey, here's this 3-hour crime movie, 3 hours, you out of your mind? And you go, okay, but it's got De Niro and Pacino, first time, it's a cop and robber, cat and mouse chasing. People go, okay, I'll check it out.
You saw me.
I'll at least start it, and then you see the first 15 minutes and you go, oh,
I'm in.
Okay, I'm in. Yeah, okay, yeah, well, I'm here for this. Um, so Tommy, where do you land on who the star of the movie is?
I think that Pacino gives the more memorable performance.
But that's
I mean,
by design. That's by
yeah,
the
that's by
character.
design and that's by character. I mean, like, but I think that I just have to go with De Niro in general because I think that he just brings such a quiet intensity that's insane that it captivates you in a crazy way. So I'm going De Niro.
Yeah, and
Whereas
that's
I like Pacino, but it's so close to going over the top.
I don't think it's as close as you think it is. I think he has some big line deliveries, but I don't think it I think it's pretty reserved in terms of its overacting. Like I think he's pretty grounded, and I think he has a lot of quiet, reserved moments, like when we mentioned the scene with the dead prostitute, and then the grieving mother is there, and just like the way he holds her and hugs her, like just like kind of processing, realizing like the humanity of what he actually is doing and what's going on there, and not just being like,
Mm,
"Whoa, get those lady out of here!" Like it's none of that. He just gives her a big hug, like tries
mm.
to calm her down, just like by human touch. Like I think it's a lot more of that. Like I don't like he's not overacting in the diner scene. Like he's very just reserved. I would say they're both very reserved because they're playing a game of chess in
Mm.
front of each other right there. That's like the fun
I,
of it for both of them.
I think it goes into that. I don't think it's throughout the movie. He's like trying that line, but there are some scenes where it definitely is.
Yeah, but those are almost
So
like the most iconic parts of the movie.
yeah,
Is that like you're like saying like he's so bad. I'm like it's when it's he's playing a
I'm saying
character,
I'm not saying he's so bad. I'm saying he's close. He's
but
if you get
in
him like
in
one
the
or two more
con
notches higher,
in the
it would have
context
been bad.
I'll put it this way. In the context of the movie, when the two most overacted is trying to waste my motherfucking time, and she's got a great ass. Like those are the two like probably most quoted lines in the movie, and the most like quote unquote overacting. That's when he's dealing with criminals and he's trying to get information. He's playing a character there. He's trying to be bigger, larger than life performance. Then I think of when he goes back to pick up his wife Justine after going to the prostitute there, and he's like, "Baby, I don't tell you because some crackhead baby started crying and he microwaved." Like he's not overacting there. He's very solemn and grave there. And I think like in terms of who the character is, it's not really overacting. He's selling himself as a certain figure to these people that he needs information from. It's almost like his attempt at intimidation, if you will. Um, that's kind of my take on it and watching it. Like I don't think it's overacting. I think it's truly within line with the character, but I think he's pretty reserved throughout the whole movie.
uh, we still need to keep attention to on more rewatches.
Yeah, but
So
you understand like my point there though, where
yeah.
it
No,
feels it feels in line with who his character is versus like, oh, he was just overacting here.
mm. Well, there's a point where I'm curious to see like if I watched the full LA Takedown TV show version of this, if the actor who played the Pacino role did anything similar to this whatsoever.
Probably not, because we haven't heard of them. So I'm assuming they don't have kind of near the chops of Al
Yeah,
Pacino and Robert De Niro. They're too small, Pacino and De Niro, two smaller actors, certainly not very well known by any means.
yeah.
Ah, are you ready, comedy partner? Waka waka.
All right. I think this is a fun one. Tommy, would he work as a Muppet adaptation? Because to the Muppets credits, they have a full ensemble of those
Yeah.
puppets.
So if we keep one human, like we were just talking earlier, I think you still keep Pacino in this movie, and you just have him instead just screaming at fucking Kermit Rizzo the Rat's like Hank Azaria, and he's just saying like, "Oh, she got a great ass right there, and you got way up in it, you got way up in her head because you're a Muppet, you're a puppet."
I think you keep Waingro. I think you keep Kevin Gage as the only human, and everybody else is Muppets because
Just this one slimy ass guy.
he's truly like you're dealing with a lot of monsters here, but Waingro is like the truly like despicable monster out of all of them from like the limited screen time
Yeah.
of him.
The
Like
Just
Like,
this complete and total, like, just he looks just like such a crazy character himself right there. I mean, De Niro would be what? Would that be Kermit right there, or would that be more like Rolf the dog, like more chilled, relaxed type of person?
I think you'd have to have Kermit be one of the two leads because it's a Muppet adaptation, and like he's
Yeah,
going to be one of the two leads.
yeah.
Um, I'm trying to picture. I think you do Fozzie as Hannah and Kermit as
Waka Waka, she got a great ass.
yeah, exactly. Like I think they could go big there.
Waka Waka, you're wasting my motherfucking time.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of room we could go with in here for those two for the Muppets here. So I'm personally for this one. It would be a new departure for the Muppet franchise, but I think
This is the Happy Time Murders if it was good.
yeah, yeah. Well, we haven't seen the Happy Time Murders, so
From its
I-
reputation.
but yeah. All right, Tommy, review time. Give me a score out of 5.
This was a great full first time watch. I'm glad I was finally able to sit down and just process this whole movie. Al Pacino's given a performance that I think is really fun. Even though I was saying earlier it straddles the line of overtopness, but I don't think he crosses the line. He's close, but doesn't. And just all the different storylines are very overarching, and it's a great movie, really fun. I'm gonna go 4.5 out of 5. Um, and what a great first watch. I'm just really glad to finally see this.
Yeah, I'm gonna echo your sentiments. 4.5 out of 5 for me. I feel like I want a longer cut of this, maybe 10 or 15 more minutes, just to kind of expand on some of the parts that we kind of mentioned felt a little less fleshed out and could have used more life to it. Even though they all served a purpose in the film, it felt like there was just one or two scenes that were missing in this movie that from it being fully complete. And I get it, it's a 2 hour, 50-minute movie. Cuts have to be made at some point there, but this is a true American crime epic here. The tension, it's a true tension cooker where it rises and falls. This great synth sound with incredible sound design, great action peaks and great characters, just great performances all around. I haven't seen Michael Mann's full catalog, but it's easily my favorite of all the Michael Mann films that I've seen. And I'm really glad we got to cover it here on the podcast because you fell asleep during it.
2 times. So,
All right. So Tommy, any final thoughts before we wrap up?
well, thank you guys so much for listening. You can follow us on social media at CNETPod, and we have a YouTube account now too. But on social media, it's on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, and Threads. It's at CNETPod, and our YouTube is
You
Haven't Seen
almost
It Pod.
you almost forgot to
Almost.
you almost forgot. It's at that point of so irrelevant that you're like almost forgetting to say it.
Well, I'm noticing Instagram's trying to promote it more because they changed the post your story button to the Threads button. So I actually always click on Threads. I'm like, I'm not trying to be here, Mark Zuckerberg. Chill out.
Because they're losing money on it, Tommy. That's
Yeah.
why.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so we have a YouTube account. We post our shows there too, and leave us a 5-star review. Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, really helps us out. And next week we're staying in LA, but it's not a cop movie this time. We're covering She's All That for its 25th anniversary. Timmy, you never seen that? Are you excited? Any temperature there? Are you excited to see Freddie Prinze Jr., Rachel Lee Cook, Matthew Lillard?
Yeah, very. Well, thank you all so much for listening. Yeah, compared to Heat, I'm very excited for She's All That. Thank you all so much for listening. We'll see you next week.